rather a lot. Also importantly, it sets the kind of move towards establishing national inspection, national standards of fire cover. Of course, these things happen after the war. The war just, kind of obviously interrupts things. And it starts the process for dismantling all the police fire brigades. To prepare for this, the Home Office separated their police and fire brigade responsibilities in 1936. It's a separate fire brigade department headed up by Dixon that has this job of preparing both for peacetime reform, but also, I guess more importantly at the time, wartime preparations. And they, Dixon hires in expert advisors to, members of the fire service, but also those that, who have some experience. Maybe they're not from work for fire brigades, but they are experienced. The most famous advisor at this time would be Aylmer Firebrace, who was Chief Officer of London Fire Brigade when we went to war and became Chief of Fire Staff in 1941. The Union at this time is becoming much more, it's becoming more influential as the period progresses. I mean, when it's formed in 1918, it's called the Firemen's Trade Union, and it's not until 1930 that it adopts its current name. But it's very influential in London up until sort of mid-1930s. That's its kind of power base, which is obviously significant, London being the largest fire brigade. So a lot of the improvements that the Union manages to achieve in London eventually get rolled out across the country. But other brigades were tougher nuts to crack, Birmingham most famously. But by May 1938, there were Union members in 63 brigades across the country. So so it's growing in influence. And as Matt said, it's really the creation of the auxiliary fire service that really helps the Union, both in terms of membership, but more importantly, influence within the Home Office. Because pretty much overnight, the membership leaps from 3,500 to 66,500 in 1940. Central to this is, of course, John Horner, former retired London firefighter, former sailor, becomes General Secretary in 1939, serves until the mid-1960s when he becomes a Labour MP. And very, very important for establishing branches across the country and for trying to involve those outside London in the organisation of the Union. So in 1940, the Union becomes the chief negotiator with the Home Office over conditions of service. And that's in large part because of the convivial relationship between Horner and Dixon and the Home Office. So, it helps having good relations with certain people in the Home Office, I think. I'm being positive. I'm there next Tuesday. If you want me to, if you've got a message for them, and then, of course, as Matt said, the Blitz plays an important role. And what the Blitz really does for this narrative is it exposes deficiencies in the police brigades. And Hull and Liverpool particularly singled out in the press for failing, failing more than the other brigades to deal with the threat from the Luftwaffe. So the decision to nationalise the fire service was taken in May 1941 by Herbert Morrison, the Home Secretary. Dixon basically implements it in 13 weeks with Firebrace's support. And the FBU is also involved in this because the Blitz obviously puts the fire service on, it gives it its most significant public profile in its history, even to this day. And so the Union has a successful charter campaign in 1941, advocating parity with the police, advocating a 72-hour working week. Most firefighters work continuous duty at this time. Advocating improved conditions for its members. And then 2 years later, in 1943, when the Home Office starts to debate post-war structure for the service, the FBU is invited to contribute its views. So it's finally recognised as a body of national political significance. And so Horner writes a very good pamphlet called What Kind of Fire Service, in which he advocates regional fire boards. So similar to the structure that's created under the National Fire Service. It's not a national fire service really, it's a regional fire service in practice. But he wants regional fire boards similar to the sort that we get with the NHS. He wants police parity and he wants national inspection to maintain standards. As he says in the pamphlet, one cannot unscramble eggs. You can't go back to the pre-war system 1400 fire brigades, it's just untenable. Of course, what he failed to account for, what all the politicians and the service associations didn't realise was how intransigent the local authority associations would be over this. When Morrison nationalised the service, he had to publicly promise that it was a temporary measure, and the local government associations held him to that. And so, at a time of huge political change in the 40s with the post-war consensus, the fire service was returned to local authority control, albeit with some modifications. So, instead of there being 1,400 fire brigades, it was returned to county councils and county boroughs. So a far smaller number, larger authorities, 50 county councils, 75 county boroughs. And that's a structure that continued until 1974, though, which changed it again. But the service got exchequer funding from the government. It got finally its national inspection through HMFSI on similar terms to the police. That was obviously abolished in 2007, or effectively abolished. It got, this as part of this post-war consensus, this central fire brigades advisory council was created. The union was a founding member of it, along with HMFSI and the local authority associations. And its role was to advise the Home Secretary on policy, and it wasn't perfect, but it gave the union and rank and file an access. And the Labour abolished it in 2007. The National Joint Council was set up and is still going today, which negotiated working conditions, pay, things like that. The union, has been an important member of that. However, the unions finished the war in a very strong position and campaigned strongly for parity with the police, which only really lasted for a few years. Because of intransigence from the local authority associations, who did not see the job of a firefighter as being on the same terms as that of a police officer for whatever reason, and so it led to this drift in pay conditions between the two services. And in 1951, following a short-lived series of national demonstrations, the stick and polish demonstrations, parity was officially broken by the Industrial Tribunal. So what lessons can we glean from my historical lesson today? Well, I think firstly, the police model had been discredited by the 1930s. There was a consensus amongst firefighters, service associations within the union, and the Home Office, and chief constables, police associations, that it was basically redundant. Chief constables had no interest in operating, fire service operational matters, and chief fire officers resented being subservient to them. And since the break in those two organisations, which is in 1947, formally abolished these fire brigades, they've just drifted further apart. So I don't know what they're expecting in terms of having a single officer command again. Second conclusion to draw is that the professional independent fire brigades, like London and Birmingham, were much more proactive in diversifying the firefighters' role in developing fire prevention and inspection. These have gone on to really shape fire services working practices since the Second World War, especially since the 1960s. And it's really difficult to imagine a chief constable or a PCC holding something like fire prevention in as high regard as the fire services current leaders do. So I think that's interesting. Third conclusion, modernisation only ever came with the collective efforts of fire service associations and representative bodies. The FBU, what became CACFOA, and actually the Institution of Fire Engineers, which was influential in the 1930s. Really, really important for driving through changes in the 1930s. They all spoke, they all lobbied Dixon and the Home Office. Though I'd end by just saying, I think because of this long history of integration between the two services, I do think that the Home Office is the most suitable government department for overseeing the fire rescue service. Notwithstanding the pressures and constraints that it's working under at the moment, though arguably not as strong as the constraints that communities and government are working under. But I think given that the service has been passed around, like a bit like a hot potato, well, not even like a hot, it's been passed around benignly since the late 1990s. I think it's right, I think it's good that it's back with the Home Office because of this kind of non-overlapping organisational culture and heritage. So let's watch this space, I don't know. But like I said, I am there next week giving a similar talk to civil servants. So if you want me to, what should I tell them that I haven't said today? Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. We have got a short period for questions and answers, so if you could, we'll take them a couple at a time, if you could just say your name and then we'll have more questions. Sam?
Yeah, I represent the South West Fire Brigades for the union. Thanks for confirming that they had to get a sponsor to set up London Fire Brigade. What was the funding models of these brigades?
Well, it changes. So in the 19th century, so the Braidwood model, the Edinburgh Fire Brigade, was funded through a combination of the local rates, what as council tax, contributions from the insurance industry, those with obviously low interests, and increasingly expenses from attending fires. Fires in industrial areas, but also fires outside town boundaries. The police brigades funded slightly differently from 1856, because the government starts funding at first a quarter of police's pay and pension budget, so police firemen obviously get that. Then that's doubled in 1874, and increased again in 1919. The fire service is completely funded through local sources up until the war, really. The Treasury fund a bit during the war. They fund, procurement, emergency appliances, and that sort of stuff. But they won't fund peacetime protection. It's 47 that introduces that, and it's a 25% funding formula in terms of the exchequer contribution. The rest is made up through the local rates. And then that changes again in the late 50s or early 60s, when the exchequer basically creates a single local government grant. The fire service is part of that, so it no longer gets its own independent grant. Ring-fenced. I think that's a really important point, because it seems that assuming the DCCs get the fire service, that budgets aren't going to be ring-fenced. What's the first thing they're going to do if there's an alleged crime rate? But the police has always been better funded.
Peter. Yeah, Peter Holland, the government's fire rescue advisor. Hi. I was going to be there on Tuesday, but I might not be there now.
Right.
No, I really enjoyed that. The thing I thought was particularly interesting was your comment about it not being a nationalised fire service, it was a regionalised fire service.
Yeah.
Could you expand on
Well,
that?
It's nationalised in as much as the Home Secretary takes responsibility for it. Hence the National Fire Service, but it's regionalised in terms of its organisation and practice. So you get the creation. So before the war, they create these 12 regions within the country that are going to operate in civil defence terms, or if there is invasion, and then the fire service structure kind of it's folded into that, and you get 39 fire regions, areas and regions, and the fire regions have a regional fire officer, in most cases a senior fire officer from before normally from a big city brigade, and they operate it. Where it's got this kind of national framework is that inbuilt within it is the idea of cooperation and coordination. So the London Fire Brigade or London Fire Region is able to, if they've got resources to spare, go to Portsmouth and help put out their blitz fires, and they do that. So it's a kind of quasi-national, quasi-regional. It's probably a better way to think. About it.
Mickey?
Yeah, Mickey Nicholas, being National Secretary. I understand the structure in London was really in place. They just bought a Scottish person to keep costs down. Around that time, how many people do you think were employed in the fire service? Are there any approximates?
Well, there are, yeah. I don't off the top of my head. It's a small service until the AFS is created.
Yeah.
The AFS transforms numbers, I might put a figure on it, but incredibly, significantly overnight. It's a small service. I'll tell you later. The numbers are in the book, but I just
Oh, really?
if you want, it's too expensive to buy. If you want it, I'll just send you an attachment by email.
Any more? Keith?
Keith Hudson, retired firefighter in June. Talk about starting with our conclusions, going through the whole event. Your overall impression there was that the professionalisation was driven by, in terms of the fire service, with the civil service. You didn't mention much about party politics and political ideologies.
Yeah.
Is that intentional?
Because it wasn't as significant then. There wasn't a strong connection between the Union and the Labour Party at this time. I thought it was, in the early post-war years, there was a relationship between the Union and the Communist Party. So the mainstream political parties were never, through my research, that engaged or involved with reform of the fire service. The fire service was undoubtedly professionalised by firefighters, rank and file firefighters and senior and chief fire officers. All the evidence points to that. The political parties get interested at moments when it's deemed in the national interest to have a reformed fire service. The 30s and the 40s is really here. So you take someone like Herbert Morrison, who was Home Secretary when they nationalised the fire service, former Lord Mayor of London, Labour had repeatedly clashed with the chief officer repeatedly clashed with the Union in London. Wasn't that keen on negotiating with them. He was one of the earliest careerist politicians, local politician, and subsequently moves on to national politics, very successfully so. It served its purpose in 1941 to then involve the Union, because the Union was in a more powerful position. But you guys professionalised it. That's my view. And you maintain those professional, credentials, capacities.
There was hand up at the back.
I'm all right now, was your
Any more? No? Well, not all. I'd like to thank you, Shane. We are just a little bit ahead of schedule, so if we take a break and then lunch is 12:30 in Division 3. You know where that is, Matt, seeing as you know the directions of the play? Oh, it's next door.
wrong.
Yeah.
Next door.
It's next door. Right, thank you very much.